welcome to my allotment. Today I'm going to be showing you the jobs and telling you about the jobs you can be doing in April on your allotment or in your home garden. Now, if you've not already subscribed to my channel, if you could please do so, because you'll get lots of helpful hints and tips all throughout the year from my home garden, my allotment and also my home kitchen. So one of the things you could be doing, if you haven't already got established plants, is you could be planting some artichokes. Mine are already out because mine have been in several years, so you could plant some new artichokes. They would be really good. What I'm doing with my artichokes at the moment, they're all planted. I've given them a good feed with some manure, but I've noticed there's a few weeds coming along there, so that's a job I'll be doing. I'll be tidying up, because what you don't want is for the nettles to overtake the artichoke, which could easily happen. So I'll be tidying that up. Same thing with the rhubarb. The rhubarb is coming along beautifully. We live in the south, so it grows really quickly. If you live somewhere where it's much colder, you could put a terracotta pot or a big tin pot over it to try and push it on. But as you can see, I don't really need to push mine on. Mine's perfectly okay to start pulling some now. But the same thing with this, you know, a couple of weeks ago there were no weeds around here, so again, keeping check of all the weeds. You know, the more effort you put in now to keep the weeds down, the easier it will be in the summer. Trust me, the more you keep them down now, the less likely they will overtake come the summer. Now, I've pruned all my trees and fruit canes, and as you can see, they are already starting to sprout. Now, if you haven't pruned them, you better get in quick, because you're leaving it to the last minute really. So if you haven't pruned your fruit canes or your fruit trees, you really must put that right on the top of your priority list, because that will hugely benefit your plants if you haven't done that. So as we move down, some other jobs you can be doing. Obviously you need to be preparing the ground. So you need to be digging over the areas and getting it ready for the things you're going to plant. So I will be harvesting the last of my kale this month. As you can see, let me just uncover this to show you. The reason you've got to pull it up now is, well, one, I need to plant something else in its place, and two, it's starting to bolt anyway, so it's had it basically. And you see, look, so that is bolting. If you let that bolt even more without pulling the rest of those kales off, the leaves will taste bitter and they won't be any good for eating. So a little bit of a bolt like that is perfectly okay. So I would just nip that out and then just harvest off the leaves that are perfectly okay. So yeah, definitely your last chance to harvest things like your kale. So if you've not already got your onions in March, again, April, perfectly okay to get them in. And again, if you haven't got them in, April is definitely the month to get those onions in. I've got white onions and red onions, and if you look really closely here, you can see they have started to shoot. Look, so if you look at them there you go. One thing you do need to be mindful of is the birds. There's often two things that happen to onion sets. Sometimes as they grow, the roots root into the ground and it lifts them out, so just be mindful of that to make sure they are still down into the soil. The other thing is, I came up here the other day and quite clearly some birds had lifted half a dozen of them out. So after you've planted them, just keep an eye on them and just make sure they're all still in the ground. All I did was I literally dibbed them back in, popped them back in the ground, and now they're perfectly okay. Once they've rooted, you're generally okay because the birds can't pull them out. But when you first put them in, they're easy. I don't even do anything with them quite often. They don't eat them or ruin them. I think they just play with them. So it's a bit of a crazy thing, and why they do it, if I'm honest with you. So if we move down, you can see I've been hard at work today. I've got some empty boxes and bags where I've been doing various jobs. So I've planted all of my potatoes now. So I've got my earlies, my second earlies and my main crop, and they're all in the ground. I've got a few potatoes left, which I think I'm going to give to someone else and they can plant them. So that's a job you can be doing this month if you haven't done it already. Still loads of time to get your potatoes in, but April's definitely a good time to be getting them in. Another job you could be doing, which is just over here, are my dahlias. So we've just put these back in the ground because the chance of frost isn't quite so bad, and if we do get a frost, it'll only be a mild frost. So we've planted our dahlias in the ground. We have got a video for that if you want to watch it at some point, which would be quite interesting. As we move up, I've still got some Savoy cabbages which are they've still got quite a lot of time to grow. And this area will have my squashes, courgettes and pumpkins, so there's no rush to pull these out. But as you can see, really nice size cabbage there, so I can start harvesting those if I want to. But these are perfectly okay still to stay here, because I won't be putting my squashes and my pumpkins out until frost has completely passed. I don't take any chances up here, because this allotment really does get hit quite heavily by the frost. I only live about 15 minutes walk from here, and I can have no frost at home but have a really thick blanket of frost up here. Something else I've started off, and I've actually started mine off at home, is I've started off some peas. Now that's something you can direct sow into the ground this time of year, but you need to be mindful of the weather, so put some fleece over it just in case we do get a light frost. But that's something that can go straight in, as can broad beans if you've got any broad bean plants. But the same thing, if you plant broad bean plants, then you must cover them with something, otherwise the frost could take them. You can actually start sowing some of your root vegetables this month, so you could be sowing some beetroot, some carrots, some parsnips, some radishes, some spring onions, that sort of thing. You could either sow them straight into the ground if you want to, or you could sow them into trays at home and keep them under cover and then plant them out later in the season. The choice is yours. And personally, with plants like that, I prefer to just direct sow them. Actually, I can't be doing with the faffing. I've got enough stuff in pots that I'm having to look after. That's something that I haven't got time for. You can also be sowing quite a large selection of seeds at home, and I will be definitely starting off my French beans this month. One of my favourite things that I love to get early. But again, they will be started off at home and indoors. I will be starting off some other seeds indoors, which I'll do a separate video on that at some point. But there are quite a few things like your courgettes, your pumpkins, your squashes. If you haven't started off tomatoes, chilies and aubergines, you could start those off as well. But again, I will do a separate video on that. So, and of course, there's always lots of digging and lots of weeding to be done. In my opinion, the more effort you put in now to keep the weeds down, the easier it will be on you later in the season. The ground is far, far softer now to get everything out than it will be come a couple of months' time, when the ground will start to firm up and we often suffer a dry spell, and then it is incredibly hard to dig that soil. It almost feels like concrete. So I would say do yourself a favour and start loosening the soil up now and getting the weeds out now. And also, once it starts to warm up, any weeds you have got will really start to root into the ground. And again, it will be much, much harder work if you wait than if you do it now. And if you don't believe me, then do half and half and see what you think. Do you know what I mean? It's always good to try two ways and then decide what way you like the most. Now, I do hope that this video has really helped you and inspired you to get digging, to get planting and to grow some of your own produce. If you've got any questions or queries, or if you want to let me know what you're doing at the moment, then please do put them in the comments and we'll be glad to answer any questions you've got.